Boris Spassky died on February 27th, 2025 in Moscow at the age of 88. And in his honor, I wanted to show you a game that he played in 1969. This was in the World Championship match against Tigran Petrosian, the reigning world champion. And this is game number 5. Spassky had the white pieces in this game, and he started with a move 1c4, which is the English opening. And after knight f6, knight c3, e6, knight f3, d5, Spassky now transposed to the queen's gambit decline with a move d4. And after c5, c takes d5, knight takes d5, we now have a line from the so-called semi-Tarrasch. White played e4, knight takes c3, b takes c3, c takes d4, c takes d4, and bishop b4 check. So black gives a check and is ready to castle. Spassky blocked this check, of course, with bishop d2. And after bishop takes d2, queen takes d2, black is now able to castle. So white plays bishop c4, also wanting to castle, of course, and after knight c6, he does just that. And b6, rook a d1, bishop e7, and rook f e1. And white has now completed the opening stage of the game. He has developed his pieces, he has castled, and he even has 2 connected pawns in the center. So all looking quite well. And now let's see how he plays the middle game, which is quite interesting. Incidentally, Spassky had studied this position with Lev Pologievsky, who later played a game against Mikhail Tal. That game went knight a5, bishop d3, rook c8, d5, e takes d5, e5, knight c4, queen f4, knight b2 with a fork, but now the brilliant move, which is bishop takes h7 check, actually gives white a winning position after king takes, for example, knight g5, and if queen g6, then h4, even giving up the exchange on d1, but the black king is just too exposed, and white is winning here. Anyway, back to our game. After rook f e1, Petrosian didn't play knight a5, instead he played rook c8. And now Spassky has to come up with a plan for the middle game, and he decides on the move d5. And Petrosian, he took this pawn. Had he played knight a5, the game may have continued bishop d3, e takes d5, and then e5. I'm not taking on d5, but e5, again opening up the diagonal d1, h7, and after h6, bishop b1. White has some good attacking chances. After d5, Petrosian took this pawn, bishop takes d5, so notice that white has a very strong bishop there on d5. And after knight a5, Spassky played queen f4, threatening bishop takes, for example, on b7, and with an attack, discard attack on the black queen. And so Petrosian, of course, gets out of the way with queen c7, offering to trade queens. Spassky has ambitions and avoids the trade of the queens with queen f5, bishop takes d5, e takes d5, and now notice how Spassky has this passed pawn on the d file, which will become quite important in the moves to follow in this game. Petrosian played now queen c2, both offering a trade of queens again and attacking the pawn on a2. And Spassky decides to give up the pawn on a2 with the move queen f4. And Petrosian goes for the pawn, and Spassky now pushes his pawn. And this pawn, like I said before, will become quite strong quite quickly. Rook cd8, going behind this pawn. The pawn continues to run to d7. Petrosian still offering trade of queens, and Spassky still refusing with queen f5. And now h6 to block the g5 squares so that Spassky won't be able to put a knight on g5. And rook c1, queen a6, and now the rook comes up to the 7th rank, rook c7. Rooks, as you may know, are often quite strong on the 7th rank, and indeed that is the case in this game as well. Petrosian, has two passed pawns on the queen side, and he starts pushing the b pawn. Spassky plays the move knight d4, and here had Petrosian pushed the pawn even further with b4, then Spassky has strong move queen e5, which basically threatens to push the knight on d4 up to f5 with then a mate threat on g7, and the knight simply is quite strong in all cases on f5. So let's say black plays, for example, knight c4 to bother the queen. Then queen e2 actually would be quite problematic for black because look at how this knight is pinned. It's attacked here. It's attacked also with a rook, and the knight can't move because then queen takes queen. So Petrosian, instead of b4, he played queen b6, attacking the rook on c7. And here Spassky played the move rook c8, and now this is where things start to become quite interesting. Let's look at Petrosian's options before we delve into what he actually played. First of all, if he takes the knight on d4, then Spassky has the continuation rook takes d8, rook takes d8, rook e8 check. And the only legal move is to take this rook, but then of course the dangerous pawn on d7 takes, become a queen, and it's checkmate. Okay, so that's why I can't take the knight on d4. Let's say he just waits and does nothing on the back rank and instead just pushes his pawn with b4. Now Spassky has the nice move rook to e8, which is quite strong. And again, black has some options here. For example, if he pushes the pawn still, then rook takes, and now black has two options. He can take with a rook or with a king. If he takes with a king, then we have the move rook takes, queen takes, knight e6 with a nice fork. So you see that the pawn on f7 is pinned, can't take, and then white wins the queen with a winning position. If he takes with a rook like this, then the win is also quite nice after the move knight e6. That's actually a fabulous move. So you can't take the knight with the pawn because then you have rook takes rook checkmate. And rook is already threatening rook takes rook checkmate. And rook, the black rook, if it takes the white rook, then the pawn takes and queens and mate next move. And finally, if queen takes, and then there's rook takes, king takes, and then new queen. And even here, white doesn't even take the queen, but instead plays queen c5, and then black has to lose his queen, and then white will have two queens. So this is all quite hopeless. And so this was if black had played b3 after the move rook e8. Another option for black, which also doesn't work, is queen takes d4. Now Spassky would have played rook takes f8, and after rook takes, he can take, king has to take, and now quite a nice move, which is, you might want to pause it if you want to find the move. The move is queen c5. Excellent move. And so now, obviously, it's a check, and you're attacking the queen. And if you move the king, then it's just queen takes queen. And if queen takes white queen, then it's mate in one like this. So, as I said before, that pawn turned out to be quite bothersome, to say the least, for black. So this is position after rook c8, and we've looked at some options for black, for Petrosian here. We've looked at b4, and we've looked at queen takes d4, but Petrosian played the move knight b7, just trying to protect the d8 square a little bit better. And now Spassky played the move knight c6, and here Petrosian played knight d6. And now you can see that black is attacking the white queen. So should white move the queen? Spassky actually did. He left the queen right there to be taken and played the rather spectacular move knight takes d8. And in fact, rook takes d8 also wins, but Spassky played knight takes d8, which is quite a nice move. And Petrosian took the queen like this, and now Spassky played the move knight back to c6, and here Petrosian again has some options. And before we look at what he actually did, let's see what happens if he plays, for example, b4, and then it's rook takes rook, king takes, and now mate in one with rook e8. So that wouldn't have worked. What else could he do? Let's say he just tries to hold on, play g6, create a square for his king. Now Spassky has the move rook e to e8, and this is quite crushing because we are threatening to take the rook on f8, and then we still have the pawn on d7 ready to queen. For example, takes, then take, and now can you spot mate in one for white? It's queen h8, checkmate. It's actually a mating pattern called the dovetail mate. So what can Petrosian do? We've looked at, after knight takes f5, knight c6, we've looked at b4 and g6, and Petrosian, he actually played knight d6 here, but it doesn't work either. Spassky now took on f8, king takes f8, and now he played the move d8, queen, and after queen takes queen, knight takes queen, Petrosian resigned because, well, he does have two passed pawns on the queen side, but they're no match for the white rook. So this was a brilliant game, in my opinion, by Boris Spassky, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. Thank you for listening and watching this video, and see you later. Bye bye.